I raised her with hands that once stitched her clothes, cooked her meals, wiped her tears. But the day she spat in my face, something inside me died, not from the insult, but from the realization that she meant every word. It started in winter, the kind of bitter cold that crept through our old house's cracked windows and settled in your bones like a memory you can't shake. I lived alone on the edge of town, in the small home where my husband Arthur and I had spent the last 35 years before he passed away. I had grown used to the silence, to the tick of the old clock, to the way the floorboards creaked with every step. But I had never grown used to the absence of family. My daughter, Melissa, hadn't visited in years. Not since the fight. Not since I told her I didn't approve of her abandoning her children to chase a man across the country. I'd said what I felt, maybe too harsh, maybe too plain, but I never thought it would plant such hatred in her heart. Then out of nowhere, she came back. She arrived one Tuesday afternoon, unannounced, pulling up in a gray Honda I didn't recognize. I watched from the kitchen window as she stepped out, high heels crunching the frozen gravel, a big black coat draped over her thin shoulders. For a second, just 1 second, my heart leapt. My daughter, my child, coming home. I opened the door before she knocked. Melissa? She didn't smile. Mom, I need to talk. Her voice was clipped, rehearsed. But I stepped aside and let her in. That was my mistake, the first of many. She didn't ask how I was. Didn't look around. Didn't hug me. She sat at the kitchen table, back straight, eyes cold. I'm going to be honest with you, she said, laying a manila envelope on the table. I've come to talk about the will. My hands went cold. What will? Dad's. Yours. The house. Everything. Melissa, I whispered, this house isn't worth much. And I'm still alive. Exactly. And when you're not, I want things clear. I don't want any surprises. She slid the envelope closer. This is what I want. Inside were legal papers she'd had drawn up. Everything to her, nothing to my 2 grandchildren. Nothing to Arthur's sister, who still sent me Christmas cards. Nothing to the people who had stood by us when Melissa ran off to Vegas and left her kids for 2 years. I pushed the papers back. No. She smiled, but it wasn't warm. I figured you'd say that. Then she stood, walked over to the family wall where old pictures of birthdays and Sunday dinners still hung, and took them down one by one. You don't deserve this story, she said. You made everyone believe you were the good one. But they'll know now. I'll make sure they do. I was stunned. Melissa, what are you talking about? You abused me. I gasped. That's not true. Her voice grew louder. You controlled me, shamed me, made me feel worthless. You were never a mother, you were a tyrant. I've already told people. My friends. Online. Soon, everyone will know what you are. I stood there, barely able to breathe. The air felt thick, as if her words had sucked all the warmth from the room. You don't mean this, I said, but my voice was small, a whimper really. She stepped closer, nose to nose. I mean every damn word. And then, she spat. Right in my face. I didn't cry. Not then. She turned and left, slamming the door so hard the glass panel shook. I stood in silence, the spit cooling on my cheek, my heart crumbling inside my chest. The next week, the neighbors stopped waving. People at the grocery store avoided my eyes. Someone posted a video of Melissa on Facebook, crying as she talked about her traumatic childhood, how her mother belittled her, mocked her weight, ruined her self-esteem. None of it was true, or not entirely. I had been strict. I had pushed her to do well in school. I'd said things I regret, things all parents say when they're scared, when they're tired. But I had loved her. I had fed her, clothed her, fought for her when her father thought she should be punished too harshly. Still, the world didn't want nuance. It wanted villains. And she gave them one. A month later, I got a letter from Child Protective Services. Melissa had filed for custody of my great-grandson, the one I'd been helping raise since her daughter overdosed last fall. She said I was mentally unstable, emotionally abusive, and unfit to care for a child. It didn't matter that I had doctor's records showing I was mentally sound, that the boy little Caleb cried when he left my arms, that the school praised how well he'd been doing in my care. They took him. I watched from my porch as a caseworker buckled him into the back of a car, his tiny face pressed against the window, mouth moving as he sobbed. Nana, Nana. I waved with a trembling hand. And then, for the first time in years, I fell to my knees and screamed. That night, I sat in the living room staring at the old photos Melissa hadn't ripped down. Her third birthday icing smeared across her cheeks. Her graduation day me in tears, her in cap and gown, our arms wrapped tight. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in decades. Diana? It's June. I know it's been a long time. I need help. Diana was my sister. We hadn't spoken in 20 years, not since Arthur told her to stay out of our business, and she'd finally listened. But she was the only person I knew who still understood me, or who might try to. She drove across 2 states the next morning. When she saw me thin, pale, broken, she pulled me into her arms and cried. I saw what Melissa's been saying, she whispered. I didn't believe it. Not for a second. That was all I needed to hear. In the weeks that followed, we fought back. Diana hired a lawyer, a smart young woman named Maria, who believed in justice and truth. We gathered letters from old teachers, friends, neighbors who remembered me babysitting, cooking for fundraisers, helping Melissa through her teen pregnancy. We subpoenaed medical records, therapy notes. We found contradictions in Melissa's story, inconsistencies in her timeline. And most of all, we found witnesses, people she had bragged to about getting rid of the old witch and cashing in. But none of it guaranteed we'd win. Truth didn't always matter. And every night, I sat in my empty house, clutching Caleb's little shoes to my chest, wondering if I'd ever see him again. The courtroom smelled of old wood and paper like forgotten stories. I sat quietly beside Maria, my hands folded in my lap, while Melissa perched on the other side of the room with her expensive lawyer and her cruel little smirk. She wore a pale blue blouse, her makeup flawless, hair tucked behind her ears just like when she was 10 and used to beg me to braid it before school. But that girl was long gone. The judge, a woman named Harris, read through the file slowly. Her eyes flicked between the pages and us. Ms. Donovan, she said. That was me now. And Miss Donovan, I understand your granddaughter's child has been in your care for over 9 months? I nodded. Since his mother passed. And you claim your daughter, Melissa Carter, has made false allegations against you? They're not just false, Maria cut in, her voice calm but sharp. They're part of a documented pattern of manipulation. We have sworn statements from individuals who witnessed Ms. Carter boasting about fabricating claims to gain control over assets and custody. Melissa leaned forward. She's twisting everything. She emotionally tormented me my whole life. She's doing the same to my grandson now. He told me he's scared of her. That's a lie, I said too loudly, my voice cracking with emotion. He cried when they took him. He calls me every night begging to come home, and they don't let him. The judge lifted a hand for silence. Let's all stay composed. I looked down, ashamed, but I wouldn't take it back. Not a word. Then, they called in the child psychologist. A soft-spoken man with round glasses, Dr. Everett had been assigned to evaluate Caleb after the custody transfer. He took the stand and opened his notes. In multiple sessions, he began. Caleb expressed strong attachment to his great-grandmother, June Donovan. He displayed signs of grief and confusion after being removed from her care. And did he indicate any fear or trauma related to her? Maria asked. Dr. Everett shook his head. No, quite the opposite. He said, and I quote, Nana keeps me safe. My throat closed. Melissa's lawyer stood. Dr. Everett, is it not true that young children often idealize caregivers, even in abusive situations? That can be true, he admitted. But in this case, there were no signs of trauma consistent with abuse. No fear, no hesitation. His distress seems entirely due to separation, not mistreatment. Melissa glared daggers at him, her hands clenched in her lap. We returned to court 3 more times. Each time, I dressed carefully, wore the locket Arthur gave me, and carried a photo of Caleb in my purse. I stayed composed. I didn't shout again. I didn't cry, even when Melissa took the stand and described me as a cold, punishing woman who never once said, I love you. I wanted to scream. I said it every day, but I didn't. Instead, I let Maria do her job. She showed texts, cruel, mocking texts Melissa had sent to a friend about taking the old hag down. She played a voicemail where Melissa laughed about how easy it is to spin people with a few tears and a sad story. The judge listened. She asked questions. She frowned, often. On the final day, Judge Harris looked at me with something close to compassion. This is not an easy case. Family court rarely is. But but I am ruling that full custody of Caleb James Carter be returned to his great-grandmother, June Donovan, effective immediately. My heart stopped. I didn't move. Then I heard Maria whisper, "You won." And I broke. Not loudly. Just a sound, a gasp, a rush of breath I'd held for months. I looked across the room at Melissa. She wasn't crying. She was furious. She stormed out, not saying a word, not even looking back. Caleb came home that evening. He ran down the walkway the moment the car door opened, his little backpack bouncing against his back. "Nana." I knelt down and caught him in my arms. "I missed you so much, baby." He smelled like sunshine and crayon. He held onto me so tight I thought I'd fall over. Later, while he napped in his old room, the one with the dinosaur quilt, I made tea and sat with Diana at the kitchen table. "She'll come back," Diana warned. "Maybe not for Caleb, but for the house. For the money." I nodded. "Let her try? I'm not scared anymore." Diana looked at me, her eyes soft. "You were always stronger than you knew." I didn't feel strong. I felt hollow, as if all this time I had carried the weight of silence, and now that it had lifted, I didn't know who I was anymore. The following weeks were quiet. Too quiet. Caleb settled in again: school, bedtime stories, Saturday pancakes. We planted tulips out back and painted a birdhouse. For a while, it felt like life might be kind again. But something had shifted. People in town had seen the case. Some apologized. One old neighbor left a pie on my porch with a note that read, "We were wrong. You're a good woman." But others just looked away, like guilt was contagious. Melissa never showed up again. But she did something worse. She wrote an article. It ran online, on some parenting site, and the title was vicious. "My mother is a monster, and the courts failed me." She didn't name me directly, but the details were clear enough. Our town. Our court. Our names cleverly dodged, but easily guessed. The piece went viral. Thousands of shares. Hundreds of comments. Some people cheered her bravery. Others called her a liar. A handful tried to dig deeper, to figure out who she was talking about. I stayed off the internet. I asked Maria to handle any legal fallout. But Caleb heard things at school. "She said you hit her when she was little," he told me one day. "Is that true?" I swallowed hard. "No, sweetie. I didn't hit her. I yelled sometimes. I made rules. I was scared a lot. But I always loved her." Why would she lie? That question, I still don't have an answer for it. Maybe it was resentment. Maybe mental illness. Maybe she just needed to hurt someone the way she felt hurt. Maybe it was easier to cast blame than face her own failures. Or maybe, deep down, she believed it. Sometimes memory is like a broken mirror. You only see what reflects back at you. One afternoon, months later, I received a small envelope in the mail. No return address. Just my name, in sharp, familiar handwriting. Inside was a photo. Melissa, age 12. In a Halloween costume we'd sewn together. She was dressed as a dragon. I remember how proud she'd been, how she won second place in the contest at school. I'd taken that photo on the porch. On the back of the photo, in ink slightly smudged, were 5 words. I remember this. "I'm sorry." No name. No date. I stared at the photo for a long time. And then I put it in the same box where I kept Caleb's baby shoes and Arthur's letters from the war. Some wounds never heal. But some scars can still be touched without pain. A week after receiving the photo, I sat by the window in the living room, staring at the dying sun bleeding into the sky, like a secret it couldn't hold in any longer. I turned the photo over in my hand again. I remember this. "I'm sorry." 5 words. A whisper from the past. But it didn't fix what had happened. And I didn't know if it ever could. Diana came by just before dinner with a sack of groceries and a bottle of wine. "You look like you're thinking too hard," she said as she unpacked lettuce and butter and the good cheddar cheese I liked but never bought. I handed her the photo. She looked at it, her brow furrowing. "Is this?" I nodded. "Came in the mail." "She's reaching out," Diana said. "That means something." "Maybe," I whispered. "But I don't know who she is anymore. And I don't know if she even knows." We didn't talk about it more. We cooked, ate, put Caleb to bed. And later, after Diana left, I walked through the quiet house, this place that had once echoed with the sound of my daughter's laughter, then her absence, then her accusations. And I realized something terrifying. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just tired. The next morning, I woke to a strange sound. Not the wind. Not birds. Knocking. Soft, hesitant. I pulled on my sweater and opened the front door. Melissa stood there. She looked different. Smaller. Her hair was up in a messy bun. No makeup. A wrinkled hoodie. Her eyes darted everywhere at the steps, at the street, at the weeds poking through the sidewalk cracks, but not at me. "I don't expect you to let me in," she said quietly. I didn't know where else to go. I didn't speak. Couldn't. "I'm not asking for anything," she went on, hands shaking slightly. "I left everything. My boyfriend kicked me out last month. The article got me fired. I've been couch surfing. I'm not proud of anything I've done. I just thought I don't know. I thought maybe if I came here, something might feel okay again." I stared at her, my daughter, my blood. The girl who once needed me to tie her shoes and now stood here on my porch with shame in her eyes. "I can't trust you," I said, my voice thin. "I know. I can't let you near Caleb. Not yet. I understand. You hurt me more than anyone ever has." She nodded, her lips trembling. "But you're still my daughter." That's when she looked up. Tears spilled from her eyes like a dam giving out. And for the first time in years, she looked like the girl I used to read bedtime stories to, the one who used to sneak into my bed after nightmares and say, "Mommy, hold me." I stepped aside. She walked in. We didn't talk much that first day. I let her sleep on the couch. I fed her. She didn't eat much. Just pushed the food around like a guilty child. Caleb asked, "Who's that lady?" I knelt down beside him. "That's my daughter. Your mommy's mom." He frowned. "Is she bad?" I took a long breath. "She's made a lot of mistakes, but she's trying to fix them." He didn't say anything else. Just nodded and went back to his crayons. Melissa stayed for 3 nights. Each evening, she helped with dishes, folded laundry, sat silently during cartoons. On the 4th day, she asked to speak to Caleb. "I won't say anything heavy," she promised. I want to say I'm sorry." I watched from the kitchen doorway as she knelt beside him on the living room floor. "I wasn't there when I should have been," she said. "That's not your fault. That's mine. But I want you to know something. Your Nana loves you, and she fought for you. Don't ever forget that." Caleb blinked. Then, slowly, he reached out and gave her a shy little pat on the arm like a truce between strangers. Melissa cried. That night, she packed her things. "I need to go," she told me. "I'm not ready to be here full time. I'm a mess. But I needed this. I needed to see you. To remember who I used to be before I got angry at everything." "Where will you go?" "I don't know. Maybe stay with Diana a bit. If she'll have me. Then find work. Maybe a tiny place of my own." I wanted to offer more. To say, "Stay. We'll figure it out." But part of me was still scared of being hurt again. So I just said, "Take care of yourself." She paused, then whispered, "Thank you, Mom." It was the first time she'd called me that in 10 years. I stood in the doorway after she left, arms folded, wind tugging at my sleeves. Caleb came out and leaned against my leg. "Is she gone?" "For now. She'll come back." I nodded. "Maybe not soon, but someday." "Are you sad?" I knelt down, hugged him close. "I'm everything, baby. I'm sad, and I'm proud, and I'm tired, and I'm hopeful. Life is messy like that." He nodded like he understood, and maybe he did. Children see things we forget how to look at. Weeks passed. Melissa called once a week, just to check in. She sent a birthday card for Caleb with a hand-drawn dragon inside, a tribute to that Halloween all those years ago. Caleb pinned it to his wall. The town moved on. People got distracted by other scandals, newer gossip. No one asked me about the article anymore. And slowly, I began to feel human again. I went to church one Sunday. Sat in the back. No one whispered. The pastor smiled at me. Afterward, a woman I hadn't spoken to in years took my hand and said, "You're brave." I didn't feel brave. But maybe that's what bravery is, doing the next thing anyway. One day at a time. One small kindness at a time. One mended heart at a time. Spring crept in like a secret quiet, hesitant, unsure if it was welcome. But in our little house on the edge of town, the tulips bloomed anyway. Bright reds and yellows, pushing up through cracked soil like they had no memory of winter. Caleb had taken to checking on them every morning before school. "Nana, the red one's opening." "Look," he'd shout, nose pressed to the window, breath fogging the glass. It became a ritual. Pancakes, shoes, tulip check. And for those few minutes, every day felt whole. Melissa called more frequently now. Every Sunday evening, like clockwork. She never stayed on long. Just asked about Caleb, about me, about how things were. Sometimes she told me about a waitress job she picked up. Sometimes she mentioned therapy. Once, she said, I told my counselor everything, even the awful stuff, the real stuff. And I knew what she meant. The real stuff wasn't just about me. It was about her childhood, yes, but also her mistakes, her guilt, her anger, the places she'd gone to outrun herself. I don't know who I'm supposed to be anymore, she admitted one night. You'll figure it out, I told her. You're trying. That's more than most ever do. She didn't answer for a while. Then, softly, do you forgive me? I closed my eyes. There was no perfect answer, no neat line between pain and peace. But I said, I'm working on it. She cried again, but this time, so did I. A few weeks later, Diana called to say she was hosting a small dinner. Just family, she said. Low-key. Nothing fancy. Thought maybe Melissa could come. You too, of course. I hesitated. I wouldn't ask if I didn't think you were strong enough, Diana added. So I said yes. We arrived just after sunset. Diana's porch was lit with old lanterns and smelled of rosemary and lemon. Inside, her dining table had a long white cloth and mismatched plates, the kind that reminded me of holidays long past. Melissa was already there. She stood when I entered, nervously wiping her hands on her skirt. Hi, she said. Hi. Caleb ran in first, giving her a small wave. She waved back. We sat. We ate. We talked mostly about safe things. School, books, TV shows. No mention of courtrooms or old wounds. But then Diana raised a glass. To second chances, she said. And something in Melissa's eyes shifted. She looked at me across the table, the candlelight softening her face. I don't deserve one, she whispered. But I met her gaze. No one does. That's why it's a gift. After dinner, we stood outside under the stars. The sky was clear, and the night air had that sweet chill only spring can bring. Melissa walked beside me down the driveway while Caleb played with Diana's dog on the lawn. I've been writing again, she said. Oh, essays, journaling, honest stuff. I'm trying to tell the truth this time. No embellishments. No villains. Just me. My version. My flaws. I nodded. Writing can help. Helps me too. You still write. Sometimes. Mostly letters I never send. Or prayers I don't know how to finish. She gave a sad little smile. I used to think you were made of stone. That nothing hurt you. I looked up at the moon. I just didn't want you to see how much did. She stepped closer. I want to understand you. Not the mom I imagined. The real one. The woman. June. I blinked fast, the emotion catching in my throat. Why now? Because I finally realized, she said, her voice trembling, that I only started hating you when I couldn't face hating myself. And there it was. The truth. The thing I'd waited years to hear, but never dared hope for. I opened my arms, and she stepped into them. We stood there in silence, her head against my shoulder, my cheek resting on her hair the same way I used to hold her when she was small, scared, trying to be braver than she felt. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something like healing. Summer came fast that year. The house was full again, not with chaos, but with life. Caleb's laughter, the hum of fans in the windows, lemonade on the porch. Melissa started coming by more often, just for lunch or to drop off groceries. Sometimes she stayed the night in the old guest room. And one day, she asked if she could bring over a friend. Not a boyfriend, she clarified. Just someone kind. He was gentle, soft-spoken, and when he met me, he said, "Your daughter's remarkable. You must have done something right." I didn't know what to say to that, but I smiled. One afternoon in late July, Melissa and I sat on the back steps while Caleb ran through the sprinkler. "I've been thinking of writing a book," she said. "A real one. Not about blame. About healing. About mothers and daughters who survive each other." I laughed softly. "That might be a long one." "Maybe," she said. "But it's ours." We watched Caleb fall dramatically into the water, laughing as he soaked himself from head to toe. Melissa leaned her head against my shoulder. "I still don't deserve your forgiveness," she said. "You're not supposed to deserve it," I replied. "You just have to receive it." "I want to." "Then you already have." And the wind rustled the leaves, the sun warmed our skin, and for a moment, everything was still, like even time had paused to honor our fragile, hard-won peace. Autumn returned with crisp mornings and gold-tipped leaves swirling along the driveway. Life had steadied, not perfect, not painless, but real. Melissa had found a small apartment across town and a steady job teaching writing workshops at the community center. She didn't visit every day anymore, and I was glad for that, not because I didn't love her, but because I knew now she was building a life beyond guilt. One evening, as I tucked Caleb into bed, he looked up at me and asked, "Nana, will Mommy ever live here again?" I smoothed his hair. "Probably not in this house, sweetheart. But she's close. That matters." He nodded, thoughtful. "She's working on being better. Like we all are." He seemed satisfied with that. And somehow so was I. 2 weeks later, Melissa called with news. "I'm being published," she said, breathless with excitement. "One of my essays, the one about you and me. It's going to be in a real magazine." "That's wonderful," I said. "I used our real names this time." I paused. "Are you sure?" "Yes." I told the truth. The whole truth. The messy, complicated, painful, beautiful truth. About what I did. About what you did. I didn't ask to read it. I didn't need to. I trusted her. And for the first time in years, I felt proud of her again. Not for being perfect, but for being honest. And brave. The magazine arrived in the mail 3 weeks later. She had sent me a signed copy. On the inside cover, she'd written, "To the woman I once condemned and now finally see. I'm sorry. I love you." I read the essay slowly, one line at a time. She hadn't sugarcoated anything. She ended the essay with a line that broke me. "I called her a monster once. But monsters don't show up every day with love in their hands. They don't sacrifice themselves quietly. They don't wait at open doors with warm soup and forgiveness. My mother wasn't a monster. She was a mirror, and I couldn't stand to see myself in her." I closed the magazine, holding it to my chest. And I wept. But not from pain. From release. Caleb turned 8 that November. We threw a small party, just Diana, Melissa, a few of his friends from school, and me. We made cupcakes with too much frosting and played Pin the Tail on the Dragon, a nod to the old Halloween costume that now seemed to live forever in our story. That night, Melissa stayed behind to help clean up. As we scraped frosting off plates and gathered wrapping paper, she looked over at me and said, "I still wake up some mornings feeling like I don't deserve this. Like I'll lose it all again." I set down a cup. "You won't. You're not that woman anymore." She looked at me, eyes shimmering. "I never was," I said gently. "I know that now." She stepped forward, hugged me. No tears this time, just quiet gratitude. And that meant more. The season spun on. Spring again. Summer. Another school year. Another birthday. Life settled into its own rhythm. Melissa continued writing. Even gave a talk at a women's conference where she stood on stage and told our story not as an accusation, but as a testament to healing. I watched the video online. She didn't know I had. I cried again, but softer this time, like the grief had worn down into something gentler. A few months later, she invited me to that same conference. "To sit front row," she said. "Next year, if you want." "I'd like that," I told her. And I meant it. One afternoon in early fall, I stood outside the house, raking leaves into neat piles. Caleb was helping, in his own chaotic way, jumping into every pile I made and laughing like it was the best day of his life. Melissa pulled into the driveway. She stepped out, holding a small stack of papers. "A publisher wants to make it a book," she said. "My essays. Our story." I smiled. "You're becoming quite the storyteller." I had a good one to learn from. I raised an eyebrow. "Me?" She nodded. "You told the story of your life through the way you stayed. Through the things you never said. Through the soup on the stove, the porch light left on, the empty bed you waited beside. I didn't understand it before, but I do now." I swallowed hard. "That's a lot for a daughter to carry." She stepped closer. "Then let me carry it with you." And in that moment, I realized we had rewritten the ending. The story that had once been about betrayal and bitterness was now about mercy. About how the people we hurt the most can sometimes be the only ones who help us come back to ourselves. Years from now, when Caleb is grown and Melissa's hair is streaked with gray, I hope they tell our story not as a tragedy, but as a testament to the damage that words can do, to the healing they can bring, to the stubborn, holy love that holds even after it breaks. Because in the end, I was not the villain, and she was not the hero. We were both just human. And that, finally, was enough.